What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Christian, aka I Hate You Dior, and I'm coming at you today with my official predictions for UFC 308 Topuria versus Holloway. They absolutely stacked this card to the brim with fights. I believe the total number is around 15. I'm not going to go too much into that with the prelims. I'll save a lot of my in-focus analysis for the main card, but I am going to be going over the entire card today, starting off with the prelim opener of Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal. I'm going with Rinat Fakhretdinov by decision. Now, Rinat was supposed to fight Nursultan Ruziboev, but he did pull out last minute, so he's getting replaced in, I believe, a week or two's notice for Carlos Leal. Rinat's undefeated. I think he's a tricky fighter to figure out. He did not look the best against Nicolas Dalby when they fought earlier this year, but Rinat has a lot of really good wins against high-level comp. He choked out Kevin Lee, took Brian Battle to a pretty close decision. I think to beat Rinat, you're not going to have to take the fight on 2 weeks' notice for sure. I thought Rinat was going to beat Nursultan Ruziboev, and from what I've seen of Carlos Leal, I'm not too sold on it, especially him taking the fight short notice, so I'm going to go with Rinat Fakhretdinov by decision. Up next is Ismail Nurdayev versus Bruno Silva. I'm a big Bruno Silva fan. I think he's been dealt a pretty shitty card. He's a cool guy, pretty fun to watch fighting-wise, but he's been matched up with some fucking terrible opponents. Fought Alex Pereira, got his eyes gouged out by Chris Weidman, fought Shara Bullet. So he's been getting some pretty, not the best matchups. Had a close fight with Shara Bullet and had a pretty decent performance against Chris Weidman up until his eyes got gouged out. And on top of that, he did take Pereira to a close decision. So I think people are looking at the 3 losses that he had recently and just going off of that. I think Bruno Silva's not that bad compared to what I've seen of Ismail Nurdayev. And from what I've seen, this is Ismail Nurdayev's debut in the UFC. I think people are underrating Bruno Silva's skill a lot. Solid chin, good striker, comes in from good angles. I'm going with Bruno Silva by decision as well. Now, the Rinat fight, he is a minus 225, and for the Bruno Silva, he is a plus 145. So I think for Bruno Silva, there's some good money to be made there if you want to throw him in a parlay. Same thing for Rinat. I think Rinat's more of a lock than Bruno Silva, but I still think Bruno Silva is going to get it done Saturday night. Up next, we have Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. I'm going with Farid Basharat. Victor Hugo isn't bad, but from what I've seen of him, I just think Farid Basharat's going to have more success in the striking and in the grappling. Farid Basharat is a minus 750, so I wouldn't really bet on him because I'm not too familiar with Victor Hugo as a whole. He only has 2 fights in the UFC, one of them being from the Contender Series where he got an armbar. He is so far 2-0 in the UFC. Farid Basharat has seen decent levels of competition, such as Damon Blackshear and Taylor Lapilus. I just think that Farid Basharat's looked better from what I've seen of him, and I'm going to go with Farid Basharat by decision as well. I see a lot of decisions going on with this card, and the higher I go up with it, I'm going to be breaking them down more and more. Minus 750, I'm not a big fan of those odds because him being such a big favorite is some cause for concern, because at the same time, we haven't really seen that much from Farid Basharat. I think he's the better one of his brothers between him and his brother Javid Basharat, I think is his name. He's looked a lot better in his fights. I just think that Farid Basharat's going to win. I wouldn't bet on it, and I wouldn't even throw it in a parlay just because those odds, you never know what could happen. Next, Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Chris Barnett. Chris Barnett is taking this on short notice. Kennedy Nzechukwu was supposed to fight Justin Tafa, and then I think before that he was supposed to fight Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I'm going with Kennedy Nzechukwu. Everybody can agree that we really like Chris Barnett. Good guy, good fighter. But physically, I think Kennedy Nzechukwu has the edge. I mean, he's not rotund and short. A lot of people think that Chris Barnett can get a spinning head kick off on Kennedy Nzechukwu, and he can. Chris Barnett's a lot shorter than Kennedy Nzechukwu at 5'9", where Kennedy Nzechukwu, I believe, is a 6'2" or 6'3". Short legs. Not the best cardio, but at the same time, Kennedy Nzechukwu is known to sell some fights. I wouldn't really bet on this fight either because Kennedy Nzechukwu is at a minus 750. If you want to bet, I would go with the over on this fight just because I don't really see Kennedy Nzechukwu getting him out of there early. And at the same time, I don't think Chris Barnett's going to have the most success in his striking. A lot of people only really watch Chris Barnett's highlights, never really see his fights where he is losing for a majority of it and then comes out with like a spinning head kick or some kind of crazy combination where he gets other guys. So I don't think he can pull the same thing off against Kennedy Nzechukwu. At the same time, though, Kennedy Nzechukwu doesn't have the most heart in him. Was losing against Carlos Ulberg up until he got the TKO. Big favorite against OSP. lost and didn't really look good at all against him. I'm not confident in betting on this fight. I would avoid it at all costs. But if you want to throw it in the parlay, I think the over is the best pick for it. Up next is Bruno Ferreira versus Abus Magomedov. Abus Magomedov is the favorite at -142, and I do see a lot of people picking Abus Magomedov. I'm not going to pick him, though. I'm going with Bruno Ferreira. I don't think Abus Magomedov has that heart in him. Decision loss to Kyle Barao, where it was pretty competitive. Had a win after that. I just don't really rate Abus Magomedov that high. In the same vein, I don't rate Bruno Ferreira that high either. Had a pretty competitive fight with Dustin Stolfus. Had a pretty competitive fight against RoboCop up until he caught RoboCop with the straight and just knocked him out. Abus is a little chinny, man. He got TKO'd by Sean Strickland. Rocked a couple of times against Kyle Barao. I'm going to go with Bruno Ferreira. I wouldn't bet on this fight personally, but I think the over is a good pick on this. However, I do see Bruno Ferreira winning this by TKO. Stronger guy, very compact, very dense, very small. Abus is pretty chinny. Got rocked a couple of times by Kyle, TKO'd by Sean Strickland. It's just not a good look, man. I'm going to go with Bruno Ferreira, but I do see a path for victory for Abus Magomedov. Up next is Bektaibek Oralbay versus Mateusz Rebecki. I'm going to go with Oralbay, but I don't think this is as easy of a fight as some people are saying. People like to go off of Mateusz Rebecki's last fight, but people tend to forget that before that fight, he did have a good win streak, was looking to be a promising contender. Oralbay hasn't really looked incredible in his fights. He tends to slow down in the later rounds, slowed down against Brenner. I'm going with Oralbay, but I don't see it being a complete lock as some people are saying. If I were to bet on this fight, I am going to bet Oralbay, throw him in a parlay, but Rebecki can't win this. There are some paths for victory for him. Becky's a good striker, good grappler. Oralbay tires in the later rounds, but I don't see Rebecki having the finishing potential to really finish Oralbay, who only really has one loss on his record. So I'm going with Oralbay by decision. I don't think he'll be able to finish Mateusz Rebecki. He got fucked up pretty bad in his last fight, and if I'm not mistaken, it did go to decision. But after the fight, man, he just looked nasty. So I'm going to go with Oralbay by decision. I told you guys, I think there's going to be a lot of decisions on this card. Fun fights nonetheless, but a lot of decisions for sure. Up next, we have Jeff Neal versus Rafael Dos Anjos. Part of me wants to pick RDA because Jeff Neal is a bit of a seller, I will say, but we gotta just look at the stats. Jeff Neal is fucking huge, goes in there at like 200, 210. RDA is a lightweight moving up to welterweight. Looks good at welterweight every time he does go up there. Doesn't really change up his game plan in fights. Isn't really going to be that strong in the clinch. I saw in the fight with Luque was able to get him up against the fence pretty easily, and I can see Jeff Neal doing the same thing. RDA is going to be turning 40 years old on the night of this fight. Been through some wars. Good in the clinch, but I don't think he's going to be strong enough to get Jeff Neal off of him. And even in the striking, Jeff Neal fucking punches hard. So I don't see him finishing RDA. RDA still has a pretty good chin. He did drop Gamrot in his last fight, looked really good in the first round. I don't think RDA has that championship dog in him anymore. Hasn't really been finished too much in his career. He did get finished by Fiziev, but that was like the first time in a long time, and I don't think he's been finished since. Jeff Neal's not really going out there finishing guys nowadays. I'm going to pick Jeff Neal by decision. Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Cerqueira. Rafael Cerqueira is a -125 against Ibo Aslan, and I can see why. Ibo Aslan did have a competitive fight against Anton Turkalj, who isn't in the UFC anymore. I've seen more from Anton Turkalj. This is going to be Rafael Cerqueira's debut. Undefeated. This is a tricky one to pick. I'm going to go with Rafael Cerqueira. I don't think Ibo Aslan's really that good, but it's his debut. For all we know, Ibo Aslan can go out there and school him. But at the same time, this is only Ibo Aslan's second UFC fight, so anything can really happen here. I'm going to go with Rafael Cerqueira. Maybe a late rounds TKO, but I'm going to also go with decision here. Wouldn't throw this one in the parlay either. For the Jeff Neal fight, I wouldn't really bet on that one either. Also, I would go with the over just because I don't see really either men being able to finish each other. But Jeff Neal's a bit of a sellout, man. Jeff Neal kind of just gives up when he's losing in fights. RDA doesn't really change his game plan, so I think it's going to be really just a long decision. I'm going to go with the over on that fight, or if they have any lines to go the distance, I'll pick that too. Throw it in a parlay, you get yourself some good money there. Now, on to the main card. This is a very tricky main card to pick. Some of these fights are pretty challenging. Starting off with Shara Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. I'm going to go with Shara Magomedov by decision. Another decision, guys. Like I said, I think there's going to be a lot of decisions on this card. Armen Petrosyan's eaten some big shots in his fights. By no means is he a bad striker. Has a good chin, good defense. I just don't see him being able to finish Shara Magomedov. And they're fighting in the UAE. If the fight goes to decision, man, I think they're going to give it to Shara. I thought that Shara had a competitive fight with Mikhail Olajaychuk. Competitive enough where Mikhail could have won, and they gave it to Shara. So I think if the fight goes to decision, Shara's winning. So I'm going to pick Shara Magomedov by decision. Nah, I'm kind of confident in that pick, I will say. I don't think Shara will be able to finish Armen. Shara tends to get a little rocked in his fights. I don't see Armen being the one to put him away, though. I think to put out Shara, you have to be a really good grappler and just really good defensively. Armen's not that guy. He is good defensively, but not really a grappler in the sense. I've been seeing a lot of things from his camp saying that he's going out there to grapple with him, so maybe that could be a key to victory for him. Even in some of the grappling exchanges that Shara had with Bruno Silva, he was doing a good job of defending himself, man. So I'm just going to go with Shara Magomedov by decision. Some people might say robbery. I don't think people are really going to care that much because Shara Magomedov is a fun fighter to watch, so I'm going with Shara Magomedov by decision. I wouldn't mind throwing this one in a parlay. Shara Magomedov is at a -170, so if you mix it up with some other picks, make some good money there too. We're getting to the part of the main card where it gets tricky to predict, starting with Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. This fight's tough, man. Lerone Murphy's undefeated, looks good in his fights, but has a lot of moments where you look at him, you're like, oh shit, he can get out of there. Had some moments against Barboza where Barboza was able to tag him up. Barboza was getting a really good jab on him, man. Barboza was just old, tired out, but even in the later rounds of the Barboza fight, he wasn't looking too hot. The way Dan Ige fights is that he kind of starts off slow, then he builds as the fight goes on. There are some things that I saw in the Barboza-Lerone Murphy fight when I was rewatching it. Barboza was getting him with the jab, getting him with the leg kicks, biting on some of the feints of Lerone Murphy. I've seen Dan Ige bite on feints a lot before. Dan Ige struggles with a lot of higher ranked competition, but then we gotta look at his activity, man. Lerone Murphy, before that Barboza fight, took a 2-year layoff, came back into the Barboza fight, looked really good, had a close fight with Mirkan Amirkhani up until he got knocked out. Another close fight with Josh Kulibau. Dan Ige, on the other hand, every time he fights up, loses, really close decisions with some of these guys. Is good at changing up the game plan, but he starts off pretty slow. There are some things that I saw in the Diego Lopez fight where I was like, damn, he can get Lerone Murphy with some jabs, some body shots, some overhands. But I think if Lerone Murphy is able to keep his distance, get him with some of the feints, stay on the outside, pop in and out, Dan Ige likes to kind of stay up in your face and be in that boxing range, and that's how he was able to get Diego Lopez with some really brutal combinations and win those later rounds. I don't think he's going to be able to do the same thing to Lerone Murphy. I think if Lerone Murphy circles around him, keeps the center, doesn't get backed up against the cage, he will have a lot of success in this fight. But if Ige backs him up against that cage, man, Lerone Murphy's not the most perfect defensive fighter. Barboza was tagging him with some shots. Ige is a heavy hitter, hit Diego with some rough shots, knocked out Andre Fili before that, knocked out Damon Jackson. It could get tricky for Lerone Murphy, man. That's the tricky thing with undefeated fighters, man, is that you never really see them lose, so it's hard to really gauge what their struggles are. Ige doesn't really do too good in these kind of fights. Lerone Murphy's pretty good with his footwork, good at circling around, popping in and out. Not the most knockout power. Dan Ige has a good chin, good defense. So I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy by decision. Up next is Rakic versus Ankalaev. This was another fight that's really hard to pick because you have Ankalaev, really good striker, really powerful, utilizes some of these guys at light heavyweight, beat the shit out of Ion Cutelaba, beat the shit out Johnny Walker, but Johnny Walker is pretty chinny. You have Rakic, huge for the division, but not the most active. Before his fight with Yuri, came off of a 2-year layoff, I believe, after his injury to Jan Blachowicz, which was a pretty competitive fight going through it. Then he has his fight with Yuri, which was a good showing from him in those first couple of rounds, but then once Yuri got hot, he just kind of folded under the pressure. Ankalaev is super pressure heavy, man. And I think if he gets in Rakic's face, Rakic isn't really going to know how to deal with that pressure. I could see Ankalaev getting a late TKO in the fight. And if Ankalaev starts to lose on the feet, he will mix in the grappling. That's what he did with Blachowicz. In the fight with Blachowicz, where he arguably won the third and definitely won the fourth and fifth, third round was doing really good in the striking. Got hot in that round and started to just kind of flow together some good combinations against Jan Blachowicz. And 4 and 5 took Blachowicz down and just kind of held him there. I could see Ankalaev winning a decision, but I think it's just more likely for him to get a TKO. But Rakic is huge, heavy hitter, good boxer, looked amazing against Yuri in those early rounds. This is another one, man. It's tricky. But Ankalaev's better against higher levels of comp. I gotta go with Ankalaev, man. A little more active than Rakic. Heavy hitter, really good striker, can mix in the grappling, and is really top heavy, really good ground control. I'm going to go with Ankalaev by a late round TKO. I think that's going to be the best pick for him. Up next, we have the co-main and main events, starting with Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. Bro, these two fights right here, man. I've been thinking about these fights since they got announced. And I spoke a little bit about the Max Holloway fight in my previous video, but I wasn't able to talk about the Robert Whittaker-Khamzat Chimaev fight. This fight's tricky for a lot of reasons, man, because you have Robert Whittaker, very active, very good striker, very fast, very good footwork, is able to circle around you and stay on the outside. Has his blitz, which I don't think he'll use against Khamzat. When he did use his blitz against Dricus, that is how he got knocked out in their fight. I think he knows that Khamzat has that one-shot knockout power, so I don't think he'll be going for that blitz or the 1-2 head kick. Leaves him open for takedowns. He's going to really try to keep the fight standing for sure. But Chinny gets wobbled a lot in his fights. And against a guy like Khamzat, I don't like that. Has that one-punch power. Good defensive grappling, but offensive grappling, on the other hand, I don't think is the best. In the first Romero fight, was stuffing the takedowns very well. And Romero did get him down. Romero couldn't keep him down. Then you got to look at Khamzat. Amazing wrestling, amazing striking. Was really able to control and dominate Kamaru Usman in the grappling. Really good striking on his end. Good kicks, good body kicks, good low kicks. Good jab, likes to fight behind it a lot. Big for the division. I think he'll be bigger than Robert Whittaker for sure. He's fast, but at the same time, he's not very active, and he's coming off of a sickness. In the fight promo in this week, he's been looking really calm. Not the most energy out of him, so I don't know if he's still battling some kind of sickness. I don't think we'll see him go out there and really try to get him out of there early. Khamzat knows this is a 5-round fight. I think he's going to try to pace himself very well. People tend to sleep on Khamzat's cardio. They say that he has really bad cardio, but I don't think that's true. Won the 3rd round against Kamaru Usman, won 3rd round against Gilbert Burns, and almost knocked him out. Good wrestling, but he's just not that active. But on the other hand, Whittaker's chinny. Good defensive grappling, but no offensive grappling on his end. This is a tricky one to pick, man. It's his first fight going 5 rounds for Khamzat. Whittaker's been there 5 rounds a bunch before. It's tough. It's really tough. Part of me wants to pick Whittaker by decision or late round TKO, but he gets wobbled all the time in his fights. Got wobbled against Paulo Costa, knocked out by Dricus. I'm going with Khamzat. man. This is like the hardest fight to pick other than the main event. but I gotta go with Khamzat. And I want Whittaker to win so bad. I love Whittaker. He's one of my favorite fighters. But Khamzat's strong. He's big. The way he was controlling Kamaru Usman, I think that Kamaru Usman's a better defensive grappler than Whittaker. Whittaker has had 2 training camps, but nothing can really prepare you for that pressure that Khamzat brings. I like Whittaker as an underdog at plus 200. But I see the fight going the same way the fight with Kamaru Usman went. I think he's going to shoot early on in the fight, control him in those early rounds. It really just comes down to how those later rounds go, man. Because if he's gassed out in those later rounds, which with him not having the most energy in these press conferences and these media interviews, could be a sign that he's still getting over some of his sickness. We don't really know with Khamzat. Whittaker can get a late round TKO, but I gotta go with Khamzat, man. Whittaker's a really good underdog, and I want to pick him because I want to see him fight Dricus again. It's hard to pick against Whittaker, but I gotta go with Khamzat by either a late round TKO or a late round submission. That's not saying anything against Whittaker, however. I think this is really a 50-50 coin flip fight. Khamzat's never really fought anybody at the level of Whittaker, and Whittaker's never really fought a grappler on the level of Khamzat. He did fight Romero, but Romero and Khamzat's styles of grappling are just 2 very different styles. You guys can see in my face, I'm having a hard time picking this fight, man. I might even change my mind. I might pick Whittaker. I don't know. I don't know, bro. This fight is hard because you have Whittaker in both the first fight with Romero, man. The way he was defending the grappling from him, it was too good. Romero couldn't keep him down for anything, man. And Khamzat's never fought a guy like Whittaker. But Kamaru defended the grappling and Kamaru got controlled. I'm going with Khamzat. And I want to pick Whittaker so bad, but I'm going with Khamzat. Maybe even a decision, but with both the way these guys fight, this isn't going to a decision. I think Khamzat's going to get him out of there in the later rounds. He knows this is a 5-round fight. He's training with good people. He's training with some of the best wrestling coaches in Russia. Going back to his old camp, I'm picking Khamzat by late round TKO, man. Whittaker's just too chinny. No real offensive grappling, but he can get up to his feet pretty well. Whittaker's not going to be throwing the 1-2 head kick just because it leaves him open for that takedown. I'm going with Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I don't want to put this fight in a parlay just because of how tricky it is. Or if you do put it in a parlay, put it in one you think is going to be real secure. You could really go either way with this fight, but I'm personally picking Khamzat. And as for the main card, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. You guys saw in my last video, man. I don't know who to pick against in this fight. I don't want to pick against Max. I didn't pick against Max in the Gaethje fight. Gaethje wasn't able to put him out, but Gaethje and Topuria are 2 different styles. They just fight differently. And I'm seeing the training videos for Topuria. He's switching it up. He's throwing spinning kicks. He's throwing elbows. He's throwing knees. He's gonna mix in the grappling. I'm going with Topuria by decision. And it hurts to say because Max is probably my favorite fighter ever. Like, for a fact, ever. My favorite fighter. And I want him to win so bad, but I just don't think he's going to. Like I said, I don't think the third Volk fight is a good indicator of how this matchup will go because Max just doesn't fight the same way he does in the third Volk fight. But Ilia's fast. He's looking faster than ever in some of these training videos. Good grappling. I could see him rocking Max and then getting with him on the ground. Going for a TKO maybe. He can knock out Max if he gets him with a clean shot on his chin, which is crazy to say because I love Max. I don't want to see him get knocked out. I want to see Max win so bad. I want to be wrong about this pick. But I just think Ilia can get it done. Like, I just think that his boxing is too good. I think he's going to try to smother Max with his pressure. His boxing's too good. He's too good in the pocket. But Max has some good dynamic striking, man. He can move around him, be very fast, get him with some good kicks. I just don't think it will be enough. I think this is a fight where it's like an immovable object versus an unstoppable force. I don't think either of them will be able to finish each other. I see this fight going all the way, man, to the distance. 49, 48, 48, 47. I see it being a really close decision. I think in those later rounds, Ilia can turn it up, just bring the pressure against him. Hasn't been in that many 5-rounders. His only 5-rounder was against Josh Emmett. Looked good in the later rounds for sure. Just once he dropped Emmett, man, he just stayed on him. And I think that's what he needs to do against Max. He needs to stay on him. He needs to stay on Max. He needs to put the pressure on him. He needs to mix in the grappling. If he drops Max, he needs to stay on him. Give him some good top pressure. Ground and pound. This hurts because I want Max to win so bad. Just like I guys told you, I don't know who to pick in this fight. Every day, my decision changes. Yesterday, I literally thought to myself, Max is going to win. And today, I woke up and I thought, Ilia's going to fucking win. You can't fucking pick this fight. It's hard. It's a 50-50 coin flip fight. But Ilia's going to bring out everything he has in this fight. They're around the same age. They're not like too different. Ilia's 29. Max is 32. Max is hitting his physical prime, though. He's biting on his shots. Real fast, real strong, dynamic. Going in and out, moving around, circling around. Good footwork. Oh, my God. I'm going Max. Max Holloway by decision is my final pick. I really hope I'm right. I don't want to put this fight in a parlay. I don't think anyone really should. These fights are super close. If you are to bet on anything, I would bet the over, or I would bet the fight to end in the first or the 5th rounds. I think at some point in the fight, whether it's in the start or at the end, someone's pointing to the canvas and they're going to duke it out. I think in the first round, Ilia's been saying he's pointing to the canvas. Max is saying he's not going to entertain it, but Ilia's going to put that pressure on him, man. But Max has never been knocked out. But Alexander Volkanovski was never knocked out the way he knocked him out. Especially at featherweight. You guys can tell this is why it took so long to make this video, because I don't know who to pick in this fight. I've watched so many Max fights. I've watched so many Ilia fights to prepare to this. And all I've gotten from it's nothing definitive, man. They're both the hardest matchup for each other in the division. I'm going with Max. I gotta go with Max. Max is hot. He's been looking good in his last 3 fights. Putting that pop in his shots. He can't let Ilia smother him. He has to get back up. Ilia won't be able to hold him down, I think. Max gets up pretty fast. He needs to circle around him. He needs to stay in the center of the octagon. Cannot get backed up. Needs to have really good movement. Can't stay still for a second. Can't entertain trading with Ilia, because I think if Ilia trades with him, he's going to knock out Max. Mind you, Max isn't coming off of a knockout the same way Volk was, but Ilia's so precise. He's aiming for that chin. He's aiming for that temple. That's just how you just get knocked out. That's the human body. There's no way around it. But Max has that experience, good defensive grappling, okay enough with the offensive grappling, good footwork, dynamic, good kicks. Volk was having success with those kicks in their fight, man. People don't want to admit it, but he did. Max Holloway, 48-47. People are going to want to watch this rematch, man. I think if Max wins, I think they're going to do the rematch. I don't see them doing a 4th Volk fight. If Ilia wins, they'll do the rematch with Volk where I just see him winning again. But fuck, this is a hard fight to pick, man. I'm going to go with Max Holloway by decision. The safest bet to make is for the fight to either go the distance, end in the first round, or end in the last. But I'm not confident in any of those three, I will say. But I'm going with Max. Max has never proved me wrong. He has a good game plan going into all of his fights. But Ilia's fucking scary, man. Ilia's a terrifying matchup for him. If anyone's going to knock out Max, I think it's going to be Ilia. We're saying that Gaethje was going to get it done, but Gaethje just doesn't have the style that works well against Max. Whereas Ilia's going to peep that pressure on him, mixing the grappling. But I think Max has been preparing, man. Max is only 32. He's hitting his physical prime. Putting some pop in his shots. Really good footwork. Isn't smothering people with the volume like he was back in the day. Learned from that third Volk fight and has just been improving and improving and improving in each of his performances. But Ilia's dirty in the pocket, man. If Max gets in that pocket with Ilia, it's done. He's getting knocked out. But I've never picked against Max. Max has never proved me wrong when I pick him. I had really, really good confidence in him going into the Gaethje fight. I knew he was going to win. I really want to pick him for this fight. I really want him to win. Max is like Max really is probably one of my favorite fighters ever. But Ilia's one of my favorite fighters right now, man. People don't want to admit it because Ilia knocked out Volk and Ilia's just a shit talker. He's out here just talking to these guys, beating them up. He's out here trying to copy McGregor, be a character on the mic. But he's a fucking dog, man. He could fight, he could box, he could grapple. He's just so well-rounded. This is a scary fight. A scary fight, man. I'm going with Max. Max by decision. Max by decision. I don't think he'll be able to knock out Ilia. It's going to be a really close fight. But I'm going with Max. 48, 47, 49, 48. That's my final pick. I'm locking it in. I'm picking Max Holloway by decision. I hope I'm right. Max by decision. I've been thinking about this video all week. I've been putting a lot of time into it, a lot of effort. A lot of research went into it. And even with all my research, I'm still not super confident on a lot of these fights. This is a really tricky card to predict. But when it comes down to parlays, with some of the ones I'm going with, really good overs that you can bet on this fight. One parlay I'm going with is over 2.5 for the Whittaker fight. Shara Magomedov to win. Over 2.5 for the Jeff Neal fight. Over 2.5 for the Mateusz Rebecki fight. Over 1.5 for the Canadian Sachuku fight. And over 1.5 for Abus Magomedov. If you put up $10, you get $2.55 back. I think that's one of the safer parlays you can pick because I do see a lot of these fights going to decision. So that's one parlay I'm doing. Another parlay I'm confident in is Lerone Murphy, Shara Magomedov, Max Holloway, over 2.5 for the Jeff Neal fight and over 2.5 for the Rebecki fight. $10 wins you back 161. Another one I'm doing is over 1.5 for Canadian Sachuku, over 2.5 for Robert Whittaker, over 4.5 for Ilia Topuria, and over 2.5 for RDA Jeff Neal. $10 wins you back 108. Another parlay I'm doing is a 5-legger. I'm going with a round 1 KO for the Ilia Topuria fight, over 2.5 for Jeff Neal. The Shara Magomedov, over 2.5 for Mateusz Rebecki, and over 1.5 for Bruno Ferreira Abus Magomedov. 10 wins you $418, which, you know, in a fight like that Max fight, man, it could end in the first or end in the fifth, so you never really know. Another parlay I'm doing, and the last one is going to be round 5 KO, Jeff Neal, and over 1.5 for Canadian Sachuku. $10 wins you $424, and we're going to leave it at that for this week's betting slate on UFC 308. Let me know what you guys think. Really, really tricky fight to predict. Bit of a longer video today, but I just had to cover all these fights, man. I will be filming my reaction to that Ilia Topuria fight, so if it goes crazy, you'll see it in the next video. And that's it. You guys have my picks. If you agree with me, leave a comment. If you disagree with me, leave a comment. If you like the video, leave a like. If you like videos like these, subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to see you in the next video. And I hope Max Holloway wins. Peace.